guys, Dilby here. Welcome back to the studio. Alright, so today it's time to get deep and techy and minimal. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through a project that I've made in the style of like Archie Hamilton, Moscow Records, that kind of thing. Other artists you might associate with this style are like Toman, Stussy, Mihai Popovicchio, these kind of guys. Other labels like Piv, Cyclic, Up the Stuss, you know the type of thing I mean. Pretty in trend right now. This is a really interesting style as it kind of blends quite a lot of techniques and it kind of takes from a few different genres like deep house, tech house, minimal, dub techno, house. It's really a fusion of a bunch of different things. As always, the full project with all of the samples and presets is available right now on my Patreon. So there's a link in the description if you want to go and grab that. Becoming a patron on Patreon really helps to support the channel and it means that I can keep bringing you these videos. But enough of that, so let's just get into this project. Alright guys, here we are inside Ableton with the project for today, and what I've done is I've actually taken a beat which I used in another tutorial about balancing a mix. So I'll link that if you want to go and check out all the drums and stuff. I'm going to just go through those really quickly because I want to get on to the melodic elements. As I said in the intro, this is my take on like an Archie Hamilton, Moscow Records kind of style. It's not based off any track in particular, it's just kind of my interpretation of that type of vibe. So let's have a look what's going on here. So kicks, so we've got two kicks, a fat, warm, low one, and a nice clicky top one. So together, so that's going to sound really good and big in the mix, and it's going to cut through as well, like on smaller speakers and stuff. Claps is made up of 3 layers. We've got this main, kind of like an analog 909 kind of style clap. Then I've got a snare layer, which is just doing some groove. Just kind of grooving with the clap. And then we've got these clap fills at the end of the bar. Hats, all right. So we've got a bit going on here in the hats. So I had these 2 top loops in the original project, and in this I've just kind of taken them down in volume a bit because the original project was at like 123, I think. It's gotten a bit faster, so it doesn't really need as much texture in the background, which is what these essentially were. But we'll have a look at the hats, right? So we've got this skippy tight open hat. I'm using these loop constraints here to really shorten the length that it can go to. These main offbeat hats, actually the length of them matches up with these open hats as well, so they sound quite good together, and I've got one pan left and one pan right. So this one's a more analog style, like 909 kind of style. So together, that all sounds like all of these little groove hits, like the snares and the clap fills and things, and these hat fills, are all sitting in places where they kind of call and response type of thing. Okay, so shaker. Really low in the mix, just there as a texture. Now this top loop. You almost can't hear it when I turn it on, but it's just adding a bit of depth to the loop. That's pretty much the way that I use like top loops and things. I don't really chuck them in as the main element. I'll tend to maybe put one in the background just to kind of add a bit of interest, and generally something that's kind of got a bit of detail going on. And we've got this extra loop. So you can hear that with those loops, the parts that are actually audible are when there's not something else happening in the main drum elements, right? Now I've got this, just a percussion hit. just helping the groove. So this skippy glitches, I've called it, and that sounds like this. So that's just these kind of like minimal house kind of textures. That's a loop being run through Tantra. If you're making this minimal kind of deep house, just get it. It's honestly, it's incredible, and there's not anything else that I can think of that's exactly like it, that does the exact same thing. For the price, it's actually amazing. Then I'm just rolling off the top because this has got quite a lot of resonant frequencies in here. So without that and without the LFO, so that's kind of too much. It's too, I just want it to be texture in the background, right? Then we've got this percussion groove, which is just a loop that, so what I've done is I've quantized it and then I've applied some swing, which is like quite an extreme swing. But it really helps to give that feeling that these kind of tracks have. I'm processing it, taking off the lows. I've got a bit of drum bus. I'm just using this pretty much for the transient designer to increase the transients, and I'm adding some compression to really like let those transients through and then pull back the sustain. Got an LFO tool so that it's essentially like ducking to the kick, and then I've got this smart compressor, which is a frequency-based sidechain against the bass line. So that's really just filling out the mid-lows. Okay, so the bass. This is a cool one. Right, so this is a patch I've made in Diva, and it's from Mini Mono. If you don't have Diva, you could recreate this with Ableton Analog. I'm not sure if you can blend as easily between the different waveforms, but basically we've got here somewhere between a square and a sawtooth. Then we've got a sawtooth, another sawtooth, and one of this oscillator here is a bit an octave higher, and then this is like an octave higher, but then back down 5 semitones, so it's actually playing the 5th. So it's making a kind of chord sound, right? Then these are just blending, so it's mainly the sub one, and then the higher harmonics are being blended in. We've got a bit of feedback, which just helps to kind of thicken up the sound. Then the cutoff is like right pulled down with a tight plucky envelope. Quite a decent bit of resonance, which is helping give it that kind of like acid type sound. Having this like really low cutoff and this really tight envelope is kind of what helps give it that kind of really characteristic like modern minimal house sound. So I'm just rolling off a bit of the subs below 25 Hertz, controlling some of the peaks with this glue compressor, and then I'm just pulling down the gain with this utility as it was starting to peak out a bit. Side chaining to the kick with the LFO tool, and then I've just got this rack here which is automated, and that just pulls out the low end in these little break sections. So that's just creating this really like intense rolling groove with the drums. And these are just like some little filter automations. So the MIDI is quite cool. It's going over 3 octaves, which is giving that really like kind of bouncy vibe. And then on the last, so this just repeats, but on the last one, instead of having this here, so I've got this long sustained note and there's some automation here. It's just bringing up the filter cutoff at the end of each bar. It's really subtle, but let's see if we can hear it. So that just gives it that wow kind of sound. By no means necessary, but it just kind of helps to give it a bit more character and a bit more interest. So I'll just delete this automation so you can hear it. So it just kind of helps it to sound quite cool and a bit more interesting. And then this automation I've got going on here just brings up the envelope amount, which I've got here automated, brings up the envelope amount in some different sections. Okay, moving on to the synths. I've got a pad here. Right, so that is playing an F minor chord, and I've just inverted the top note. And then this one is playing a C minor chord. And what's happening in this pad is I've got some automation going on the filter. Now, for the pad, I just used a preset from Ableton. There's a lot of processing, as you can see. Turn all this stuff off, and then we can hear what it sounds like. Pretty rubbish. Okay, so then we've got the filter first of all, and because it's got this macro rack, I just used an external filter and then automated the cutoff manually. So just by using this drive and this resonance, it helps to give that pad a lot more character. But it's still got that kind of tinny feeling, and I want it to be a bit more pad-like. So I've got an echo here, which is doing some dotted 16th notes, and it's a ping pong, so it's mainly in the sides, and it's got a little bit of reverb built into the echo. The left and right side are delayed a bit, so it doesn't go in perfect synchronization. As the delay taps carry on, they get more and more out of sync. Now I've got another delay, which is like a stereo delay, playing 8th notes, and I'm not even sure what you call this. So it's still kind of the same thing, but it just helps it to sustain on a bit longer and starting to get more of that pad kind of feel. Sidechain. Then I've got this amp. Now this is where it really takes a turn to be a bit more interesting and a bit more rich and thick. So that just adds in a lot of nice sounding harmonics. I've got some chorus here from the free Tel LX. And then I want this to be the track's kind of dubby, so I really want to control which frequencies are being let through here with this EQ. So I'm taking out a lot of those low mids because the bass line is happening quite a lot, and then I've got like this percussion groove in there. I don't want different elements to be piling on top of each other and creating like build-ups in certain frequency bands. This area here between like 100 and 300 hertz is basically the frequency range that we're talking about when we say things are sounding muddy, right? So basically just getting rid of all of that. Now I've got this sampled chord here, which I've just taken this from a sample pack. All right, so pretty boring. Let's turn the processing on. So the reverb is really what's helping that a lot. And then I'm just using the saturator to kind of bring up the sustain of that reverb, and then the glue compressor to control the sustain of that reverb. So without the reverb, it's still pretty bland. Cool. I absolutely love those kind of sounds. You find them in a lot of my tracks. And that just really helps to kind of keep things rolling, having that at the end of every couple of bars. It just kind of helps to feel like things are kind of progressing forward. Okay, so now we're going to talk about this filter dub chord. So let's have a listen. So you can hear that's got like so much movement and kind of, it's got a rich sound. It's not super loud in the mix, but it's just giving like this really kind of evolving texture to everything. So every time that loops around, it's still not going to sound exactly the same because there's so much like randomized automation going on. So what's happening here, the MIDI is just playing like a simple pattern, which is again utilizing that idea of call and response. I'm trying to create call and response between this element and the bass line, the percussion, the hats, chords, everything in the track. But there's a couple of vocals, so everything should be kind of like going one plays, the next plays, one plays, the next plays, and kind of creating like a hypnotizing rhythm was the ideal outcome. These are just playing single notes. Now you can see these are just playing single notes, but I've got this chord device which is actually making it into a minor seventh chord. Then when this chord device puts MIDI notes on top of some of those notes, they might be outside of the scale of F minor. So I'm using this scale device to push everything back into F minor. Now we've got this simple patch I made on the analog here, so you can hear what it sounds like by itself. I'll turn off this LFO tool as well. So you can hear it's kind of like, it's got the fundamental basis of the sound, but it's really bland, and it doesn't have the kind of movement that it does when we're playing it before. So that's just a saw wave, and then it's got a square wave below, 1 octave, and that's just playing like really quite plucky. You can see there's no sustain on the amp envelope, really short decay, and then the filter is kind of like what's creating the magic in this. Again, that's got a really plucky envelope. It's a bandpass filter, which is kind of, instead of like cutting off the bottom and letting the highs through, it creates a band that it allows through, and then it cuts the highs and cuts the lows. It's got a lot of resonance, which is creating this kind of like interesting peak in the sounds. And then the filter frequency is being automated by this Max for Live LFO, which you can see that moving here. And that's meaning that although this is playing different chords, there's different kind of random frequencies being emphasized as it goes along based on this frequency here. So the resonance is basically saying at whatever frequency this is, push it up by quite a lot. So let's hear that with and without the resonance. So it just gives so much depth and texture to the sound. Now let's get into the processing, because there's a lot here. I'll just turn these all off. So first up, we've just got an EQ cutting off all the lows and the low mids. Then got a, because this resonance is happening at a bunch of different frequencies, it really creates a lot of difference in the amplification. So this is just to really kind of create a bit more balance in the volume between the different hits. Got some saturation. That also helps to do something similar to a compressor. I've got another auto filter here, which is pulling back the highs. So it's kind of emphasizing that band again. And it's got another resonance at the peak and a bit more drive. So that brings back some of that resonant sound that kind of comes away because of the compressor and the saturator. And this is just being automated a little bit with the LFO on the auto filter. Bit more compression just to control things again. With all these resonant filters, volumes can get quite quickly out of control, especially with all the drive and things as well. Then I've got some chorus, which is just adding a bit of width. Pretty subtle. Some reverb. Now things start to get more interesting. So you can see it's getting some space there. Now another EQ, just cutting back some of those low mids again and emphasizing this peak around 1K, which is where I felt like most of the character of the sound was. And then an echo to give it this dubby vibe. So I'm filtering out the lows on the echo. It's a ping pong with dotted eighth notes. Not too much feedback, and kind of a moderate amount of dry wet. So just such a cool element to kind of keep things rolling over, keep things kind of sounding interesting and different, like they're always changing. Even though there's not, like, I haven't recorded or drawn in any automation on there, it's all being automated with the LFOs on this Max for Live device and this auto filter. So now we've got another W chord. So you can see that, again, it's utilizing this kind of call and response and this groove at the end of the bar. A really cool sound. I really like this one. So what I've done here, it's a wavetable. Again, it's playing just a regular triad chord, and these are all on the F. So it's playing all F. Now, we got two wavetables here, which are both essentially recorded from different saw waves, different analog synth saw waves. So this is without any of the processing. Pretty bland. What's making it a bit more interesting is this second bandpass filter here. Now without it, it sounds like this, which is just a bit more bland, right? That's being controlled by an LFO, and also, let me open this up. The position on these wavetables is being controlled with LFOs, LFO 1. So you can see as this goes along, these filters move. Pretty cool. So each one of those hits is going to be different. Now, processing. This is where the sound really kind of gets formed. A bit of saturation. Some echo. Similar to the last one, but it's got a bit more dry wet, a bit less feedback, and this is playing a 16th note. So it's a really fast, short delay. I guess you'd call it a slapback delay. And the reason I'm using that is to create a bit of texture in the chord and kind of have it sustain a bit longer. But you still get the plucky feel from the filter. Now, this is what's giving it a lot of character, is this erosion here. I'm using the sine setting on the erosion. What's happening here is this LFO from Max for Live is assigned to the frequency. So that's just shifting where this sine erosion is being applied. So that helps to give it that kind of bit crushed sound, and it means that each chord is different. I think you can see a theme happening here. Now we've got some reverb. Quite a short reverb on this one. So that's just emphasizing the transient of those stabs again. Just cutting out the lows. This time I didn't cut it so high because a lot of the body of the sound is in the mid-low between 100 and 300 hertz. And then we've got a delay on the end. And so that's a ping pong on playing on dotted eighth notes, I believe is what that 3 means. So in the track, really cool. Okay, so kind of wrapping things up, we've got some vocal here, which is a bit of a cheesy wee number. Get down. Get down. So I've processed it a bit so it doesn't sound as audible really. So I've cut out the lows, added a bit of compression. What I've done here, is I've used the, I've pitched it down, and I've used the envelope amount to just actually bring the sustain of those vocals in. This just gets rid of any reverb, or then I've used this glue compressor to again emphasize the transients and take away the sustain a bit. I'm using the saturator to beef up the sound a bit. Get down, low, down, 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 get down, low, down, 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 down. You can hear these delays which are coming from these returns. Then I'm using some LFO tool just to kind of help sit it in the track. Get down, low, down, 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 down. Then I've got this bit crusher, and so it's got a bit reduction and downsampling. Get down, low, down, down, which helps to really gritty it up a bit. And then a little bit of echo, which has got a bit of reverb applied on there, so it really helps to sit it in the track. So it's really just as some kind of ear candy at the end of each bar there. Now I've got these other vocal hits which I'm playing in MIDI. So what I did is I took the same sample, show it in browser.
Can you feel it?
But I'm just using the feel or feel it every bar. And having that bit crushing on there helps to kind of make it almost feel like a synth, or it's got a bit more texture to it. And then this is just playing the start of the sample. But you'll notice on these simplers here, I don't have a lot of sustain. So again, it plays kind of like the transient of the sample, and then the rest of the word is a bit quieter. And then again, that's bit crushed, and I've just got these panned a little bit left and right. So I mean, the vocals are there to add some kind of texture. The human ear loves the sound of the human voice. So I find it pretty hard to do a track myself without using some kind of vocal, but it doesn't have to be a big like lead vocal sound. Then the effects, really simple. Got this reverse vocal sweep. Got a crash. And we've got a reverse crash, which is just bring it up at the end. Don't forget, all of this is available for download on my Patreon page, and what I'll do is everything that's using a third-party device, I tried to keep it to a minimum. So like this diva and this percussion sound that uses Tantra, I'll freeze those in the project. So go to my Patreon, patreon.com/DilbyDJ, and you can download the project there. It's already available. So enjoy that, and thanks for checking it out. Alright, so that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you got something from that. I really enjoy this type of style. It's fun to make and it's fun to play. I released some music that's pretty similar to this on labels like Bondage Music and 8-Bit. So if you liked this video, you should probably check out this one, where I walk through one of the tracks from my latest EP on 8-Bit. It's good. Anyway, that's enough for today. We'll catch you next time. Peace.